Raiders OTAs underway, and if we need to remind you, this is a very different looking Raiders team. You have a new head coach in Pete Carroll, a new quarterback in Geno Smith. They drafted one of the hottest prospects in running back Ashton Jeanty, and oh yeah, lest you forget, Tom Brady is now in the front office. Let's welcome in Tashan Reed, who is there in Vegas. He's been out there with the Raiders, seeing what's going on in practice. First, I want to talk about the coaches because we're hearing this Pete Carroll effect is already kind of taking place at practice. So I'm curious what that means. And then also Chip Kelly there now as well.
Yeah, I think the thing with Pete starts with competing, right? That's his mantra. He says it, about 100 times every press conference. But he has a lot of energy. He's the oldest coach in NFL history, or he will be when he turns 74 later this year. But he's out there backpedaling with the defensive backs, running around in 96 degrees weather, which we have here in Las Vegas every morning. They're still practicing outside, even though they have an indoor facility. And so, it has actually a real effect. I think he's really good at, integrating himself, not just with the players, but also the coaching staff, and kind of, having that positive energy, which is something that the Raiders really need. I mean, this franchise has been stuck in this, tumultuous cycle for the last few years with all these different regime changes, different head coaches, different GMs. And they're hoping that Pete Carroll can bring some stability. His track record speaks for itself, not just in the NFL, but at the college level. And I know things didn't end well for him there with the Seahawks, but still was a lot better than what it's been with the Raiders the last few years. And so, everybody's undefeated in the offseason. So still got to go out there and prove it once the season starts. But the vibes around the Raiders feel much different this time of year.
Yeah, I bet. I want to talk about the offense because I mentioned, Chip Kelly's now there. Obviously, Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, they have a very close relationship both on and off the field. We saw what that looked like in Seattle. But now with Chip Kelly in the mix, you draft a guy like Ashton Jeanty. What are some things we can expect from this offense this season?
Yeah, it's really a new look group. The Raiders, they've had sort of this revolving door at quarterback since they released Derek Carr a few years ago, and they believe that Geno Smith is the answer. They made a big commitment to him, not only trading for him, but giving him a 2-year extension, and they believe he's the guy for the foreseeable future, even though he's 34 years old, and they're giving him some weapons to work with. You mentioned they drafted Ashton Jeanty. They have Brock Bowers, who was the first-team All-Pro last year. Jacoby Myers is a slept-on receiver, in my opinion, and Chip Kelly, he's sort of the question mark, right? I mean, we've seen him have a lot of success at the college ranks back in the day at Oregon, and then last season at Ohio State, helping him win a national championship. But he had a bumpy tenure when he was in the NFL about a decade ago with the Philadelphia Eagles and then the San Francisco 49ers. And so there's some questions about, can he do it at the next level? And he's changed a lot as a coach since then. His scheme isn't as high flying as it used to be. He uses some more old school principles, more tight ends, more running the ball, not as pass happy. But really a big issue for him, in the past was being able to connect with players in the interpersonal relationships. And, going back to Pete Carroll, that's something that's really a non-negotiable with him, is being able to connect with players. And I think that's something that Chip Kelly understood when he took this job. And, he's really worked on that relationship with Geno Smith. It all starts there, obviously, with him being the quarterback, but that has to carry on throughout the rest of the roster as well. And so, this offense, we'll see what their potential is. There's a lot of change, and there's been a rough spot for the Raiders the last few years, but they think the ceiling can be pretty high with this group that they have.
Yeah, a pretty rough start. We'll talk about the AFC West here in a second. I'm curious, we've mentioned it's just been so fun to have Tom Brady in that front office, but how much of a role is he going to have? Because he has his broadcasting career, and obviously you kind of have to keep those things separate. So what sort of impact is he having on this team right now?
Yeah, I'd actually look to another sport to make a comparison, sort of what Jerry West was his last few years working with the Warriors and the Clippers and their front offices. He wasn't the GM, he wasn't the guy on the phone making trades, but he was essentially a high-level advisor, and that's what Tom Brady has been for Pete Carroll and GM John Spytek. And he has a relationship with John Spytek. They played together at Michigan. John Spytek was in the front office with the Tampa Bay Bucks when Brady won a Super Bowl there a few years ago. But Brady isn't, he's not Jerry Jones, right? So he's not that type of owner for the Raiders, but he is a voice that they turn to. Before they traded for Geno Smith, they had meetings at the team facility that had coaches and front office members involved, and Brady was there to have that meeting to help chart the path forward. And so he is involved on a high level with the big decisions, but he's not necessarily running the show in the way that a lot of people may think. And so I think it's a positive change. It's hard to argue that anybody knows more football than Tom Brady, and he has his permanent fixture in the organization moving forward.
Yeah, I think Raiders fans have a lot to be happy about this season, or at least have a little bit more faith than they have in the past couple of years. Taking a look at the AFC West, it is very competitive. You got the Broncos, who were a surprise, really good team last season, the Chargers, and then, of course, the Chiefs. The Raiders had a 4-13 record last season. How much do you think they can compete in this division, but then also kind of what is their belief of how they can compete?
Yeah, so their aim is, for sure going to be trying to make the playoffs. I mean, that's pretty much all Pete Carroll did with the Seahawks. But I think when you take a realistic view, this is a really tough division. Like, in my opinion, I think this is the best division in football. You mentioned they had 3 playoff teams last year, and you could argue that all 3 of those teams got better this year. And while I do think the Raiders improved, they were coming from a much lower floor, coming off that 4-13 season. And even after the moves they made this offseason, they have a lot of holes on both sides of the ball. I mean, offensive line is a question mark, linebacker, cornerback, receiver, is a big, position where they don't really know what their answers are quite yet. And so it's hard to see them, winning this division or maybe even making a playoff spot. But I do think they'll be a competitive team. It won't be hard for their fans to watch, how it's been the last couple of years. And so I think finishing somewhere around 9-8 is probably what's going to be the result for this Raiders team.
Hey, try to make the postseason, get a winning record like you said they could have. I got to ask you, you're in Vegas right now. We're in South Florida. Is it boiling there yet?
Honestly, it's not too bad. I know that sounds crazy. Like, it's going to be like 104 degrees this weekend, but bad in Vegas for me is like 115, 120. Like, that's when it's bad.
Yo.
Like, right now, this is fine. I'm cool with this. This is fine.
You're crazy. 104 is not good. 104 is bad. Stay cool out there if you can, since apparently 104 is fine with you. We'll talk to you soon, Tashan. Thank you so much for the information about what is going on right now with the Raiders. As he mentioned, they would like to make the postseason. They would also like to win a game in the playoffs. Second longest drought without a playoff win, sitting behind the Dolphins.